there was a report that showed that he only got one donation from a voter, just one.
One
and guess
donation.
Where I'm going later on today. Yeah, and so guess where I'm going later on today? I'm going to find that one voter. I'm going to pour some salt on that wound. I'm not letting him have even one donor. So I'm going to go reach out to that person.
That's great. So if anybody has questions for Ammar, you put them in the comments section, or you can call the number that's in there. So what does it say? First of all, were you surprised that with this strategy of small dollars that you were able to outraise the opponent? Because the argument is that, well, maybe small dollars are better, but but the total amount that you can get is always going to be better from the wealthy, from PACs. That, in your case and some others, turned out not to be true. Did that surprise you?
Yeah, I was really surprised. But it's really a positive message for me because I've been trying to run this progressive, positive, inclusive campaign, and it's paying off. So by every metric, right, by the establishment's metric, we're winning. We have more cash on hand than Hunter and my opponent. We've outraised them. We've done it with very little, like mainly individual donors. We got one union PAC to endorse and give us money. But we've been able to do this through a people-powered movement. So by the establishment's metrics and the progressives' metrics, we're leading. And my hope is to, pave a path towards a unified, fortified, progressive future. And if the establishment wants to play it on our terms and they want to give me resources to fight on a platform that expands Medicare for all, ends regime change in the Middle East, has a robust infrastructure plan that is not going to stick it to the middle class but make sure the top earners pay their fair share, ends the most expensive and excessive and burdensome welfare system in America, corporate welfare, and allows us to end Citizens United. If they want to help my campaign do that, they're more than welcome to, but those are the terms in which I'm running my campaign. So if the DCCC is thinking, hey, we picked the wrong guy, and they want to come around and support me, they need to know full well how I'm running and what I'm running on.
You've had a few conversations, I'm sure, with the party. How do they respond when you say, like, no, look, I'm telling you this works. We're building a grassroots army. We're going to raise money. It's just a different way of doing it. Is it just a polite kind of nodding, or do you think that they're starting to absorb what you and other kind of insurgent candidates around the country are doing?
It's like anything, right? If you're like a lowly staffer in a big organization and you're telling your boss, hey, I saw this works, we should go this route, your boss is going to stick to their conventional thinking until you could slowly show them what you're doing. It's actually paying off. It's working. There's utility in this approach. And so I don't really see it as them like snubbing me or being negative or spiteful. It's just they're kind of removed from the process on the ground, right? And that just happens like in the higher echelons of leadership with every institution. And I think they have their own way of doing things, and it's not working. It's a totally failed approach, right? And the status quo has to change. But I think they're receptive to it. Obviously, they're beholden to different interests than I am, so it's a tougher conversation for them. But I'm freed up. I mean, I'm not taking any money from big oil or big corporations or massive donors. So I'm kind of freed up to say what I think will serve the interest of my district. And look, the district hasn't been flipped in decades. And if the establishment knew how to do it, they would have done it already. Right. So I think they're really hungry for an alternative kind of approach to trying to flip this district and turning it blue.
And you recently won in California what's known as a pre-endorsement. In order to get the pre-endorsement, you had to win at least 80% of the delegates last week or so, and you won 97% of them, which more or less assures that the state party is eventually going to endorse. If that happens, do you expect the National Party will ask the other Democrats in the race to step aside so that the election isn't spoiled? And so for our non-California listeners,
right.
Explain briefly the way that the primary system works there.
Yeah, it's the top two vote getters, right? So it could be two Republicans could advance from the primary, two Democrats can. It's unlikely that two Democrats will advance, but it could happen where two Republicans do advance.
It has happened before, right?
Democrats on one side. Yeah, and it's happened before, and that's a huge concern, the 49th, because there's about 6 of them. There's 3 Democrats on our side. And look, if you have 2 Republicans advance, it's going to be the first time in a generation that a Democrat doesn't take on the Hunter dynasty at its weakest period. I mean, it would be a shame on us. The gates of hell would be locked on the inside if we didn't do something about this. So I hope the party, tries to build consensus around the consensus candidate. And by every metric, 97% of the delegates voted for us. That's in a three-way race, right? We've outraised Hunter. We've outraised the opponent. We have more cash on hand. Let's learn from this past election cycle. This is a contrast election cycle. When you see Alabama turning blue because the African-American women vote turned out, well, we could do the same thing in this district. When Danica beat Bob Marshall, Danica, who was a transgender woman who beat the guy who authored the bathroom ban, it's a contrast election cycle. And I got contrast with Hunter, not just my hues, but my views. And I think it's the issues I'm running on that's going to help us win.
So let me give you a skeptical comment from one viewer who says, Ammar doesn't stand a chance against Butner in California 50. It's a super rural, right-leaning district. Butner might have a chance against Hunter, but all the money in the world won't elect a guy named Ammar in California 50. Not trying to be negative, that's just how they roll in the 50. Visit it and find out. That's from a viewer named John Williams, who thinks that, and I assume by a guy named Ammar, he thinks that your ethnicity is going to get in the way of in this district. You want to take that on?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a fair concern based on conventional thinking, but it's totally out of touch with reality, and I'll tell you why. First of all, I've been going to a lot of rural areas. I live in Humboldt, first of all. But I've also gone to Lakeside, the Lakeside Rodeo. I've talked to conservatives there. I went to a bar in Ramona, the oldest bar called the Turkey Inn. There is literally a shrine of Trump inside that bar. Outside that bar is a sign that says Ammar Campa in a jar. Because we talked about the issues. I talked about how, when they're gone, someone has to fight for their kids. When the worst times of climate change hit, when education system doesn't lead to good paying jobs, when we inherit soul-crushing debt, someone needs to fight for their kids' futures. And that resonates with people. Above and beyond that, we've actually had a Navy SEAL who ran 10 years ago against Duncan Hunter. And he lost worse than the guy who ran last year, who only had $27,000 to his name in the whole cycle. And on top of that, there's a study that came out where about 100 Democratic veterans have been nominated in the past couple years, and only one has beat a Republican incumbent because she was a progressive. I think if you're going to run on the military background in a district like ours, you have to be a progressive who could keep your base and then try to sway people on the other side. Otherwise, conservatives are going to say, look, I'm going to go. Keep in mind, this is a district that voted for a guy who was in jail, Duke Cunningham, over a Democrat, only because there was no appealing thing on the other side. And so what I'm offering is a guy who is running, working hard, 700 volunteers. And look, the district's 35% Latino. It's 15% Middle Eastern. It's half me. I'm not running to be the candidate for brown people. But we need those people to carry us over to 51%. And I know we could do it. There's 4 campuses in my district. There's a lot of young people. If we turn out young people, minorities, women, lifelong Democrats, and even those Trump supporters who voted for Obama and Trump, they're not ignorant. They're ignored. When we talk about working class issues, I know we're going to win. That's why we got 97% of the California Democratic Party's endorsement. That's why we've gotten every county club endorsement. That's why we've outraised Hunter and Josh. I just don't think he creates a contrast enough to Hunter to pull this off.
On your supporters, that's the next question that somebody has. It says, what's the makeup of your donations and energy? DSA, young people, regular people, unions, etc. Like, how do you? What is the makeup of your base and your backers?
Yeah, it really varies, right? I have a lot of people in the district. They've had like small dollar fundraisers at wineries in Ramona and in Escondido and El Cajon, and then I've had some fundraising outside the district because it's a national office. You have to do that. Some Middle Eastern folks, some Latinos, but people from the Jewish community. It's as diverse as our country and our county and our district. And it's really just making a compelling case. A lot of these people are first-time donors. They're going to be first-time voters. So to address that other guy's question, how are we going to win? It's creating that enthusiasm and expanding the electorate. Right now, the most electable guy is Duncan Hunter, unless we expand the electorate like we did in Wisconsin and Alabama and Virginia and New Jersey. If we do the same thing we've done before, we're going to get more of the same. We've had that profile run before against Hunter. They do worse than non-veterans. Not because veterans can't serve. I got veterans in my own family. There's a guy who's serving in the 49th who is a great guy, but he's progressive. If you're a moderate running in our district, you're going to lose the base, and you won't be able to appeal to Republicans because you have a D next to your name. Right. You got to be a progressive.
Maybe this will be the last one. I know you got to run. Lauren Perrine says, how are you getting your name out there? Are you getting pushback when you're trying to access resources from the party?
Access resources from the
party.
No, not anymore. Now that there's a mandate, and I talk to people and I tell them, look, I wouldn't be the first skinny brown guy with a funny name sent to Washington, right? And we have, and I remember before we were feeling the burn, before we were strong together, we were all fired up and ready to go. And this president didn't do everything I wanted him to do personally. I was against TPP and a couple other parts of the president's agenda. But I do remember a time when we were all unified, right? And I think I'm calling for that message of unity. And people care. People like about the issues, right, in my district. And when I tell them, look, Ammar, there are these signs people are making, yes, we Campa, join the Campa campaign, in Spanish, votar para Ammar, ways for people to remember my name. There are people putting up signs in their houses, like on their windows. People are getting the word out. And when you have one person donating to Hunter in the district, and a whole bunch of others voting for us and donating to us, it speaks volumes about the contrast of the kind of campaign I'm running against Hunter. And it's not just because of me. This election's about, I tell people, it's about you and me becoming an unstoppable we against adversity and corruption and greed. And people are connecting to this. It's not even about me. It stopped being about me a long time ago. My team has this saying where you come for Ammar, but you stay for each other. This has quickly outgrown me as a person. I'm just a steward of this story, of this movement, this populist uprising in my district. And people don't have to know how to pronounce my name. They just have to pick it out on the ballot. So as long as we have them do that, we'll be okay.
Okay, this is really the last question. Max Simpkins, this isn't exactly a question, but I wanted to give you a chance to tell viewers who might not know who Duncan Hunter is a little bit about who your Republican opponent would be. He says, this is how he puts it, he said, Duncan Hunter is a terrible bro who also can't even manage to keep his own kids from wasting campaign money on Steam games. Tell folks what he's referring to, and a little bit about your opponent.
And I don't spend too much time trying to attack him on those grounds, but he spent about $60,000 of his campaign funds on personal expenses like trips to Rome and his kids' school and Versace clothing and all this stuff, which is all illegal, by the way. And there's more to it. There's actually more, like some business was subpoenaed because there's more spending that was questionable. He's had to spend over $500,000 from his campaign war chest on legal fees. So that's why he has less cash on hand than I do. But more than his mismanaging of campaign funds, his mismanaging of taxpayer money is what's driving me and a lot of people in my district insane. This is a guy who refuses to put the 50th first. He talks tough talk about North Korea to appease Trump, knowing that our district is in striking distance. So why provoke North Korea? He knows, he said himself, that this tax bill would hurt California. He literally said that on TV. He fully acknowledges that. And then he says, but it's going to help the rest of the country, like his donors. It's going to help enrich his donors that then enrich him by illegally using his money. And then he talks about a wall. Even the conservatives in my district hate the idea of the wall because we already have a wall in California. Why are Californians going to pay more taxes for a wall in Texas and Arizona? These are folks who care about state rights and state autonomy. Why on earth is California going to pay for a wall, by the way, that won't work? Walls stopped working the moment America built airplanes.
I thought Mexico was paying for that wall anyway.
Sorry?
I thought Mexico was supposed to be paying for that wall anyway.
Yeah, he broke his campaign promise a long time ago. We should, instead of trying to build a wall, rebuild the middle class, build up working families, take that $25 billion and invest it in tuition-free college and vocational training and rebuild the middle class. He has betrayed. Trump and Hunter have betrayed their own voters, their own donors. It's time that they do the same and betray them and jump on the Campa campaign and pave a path towards a unified future where everybody gets a fair shot. That's what we need in this district. And I'm really just tired of the antics and the distraction that Trump is doing. Like right now, we're talking about Russia and everything else. We have to reclaim the narrative from Trump. We can't just react to him. We can't just be the opposition party. We have to be the opportunity party that fights for Medicare for all and immigration rights and the working class and just making sure that we're doing the right thing by people. Look, every day people are working hard. We should do the same thing for them. We should serve them as well as they serve us, and that's not happening in Washington, not under Hunter.
Great. Ammar Campa, running in the 50th District in California. Thanks so much for joining us. Welcome back anytime. Good luck with the rest of your race.
I appreciate it. Thanks. I got fired up there. I apologize.
Fired up is good.
Brian,
Sounds good. Thank you.
Janet Leckworth is arguing with others. She started out by saying Democrats won't win in November. I've been hearing it everywhere. They have no message. And then up here she backs herself up by saying, am I right? Democrats have no message. What is it then? A better deal, more taxes? And the Republicans have gathered far, far more money than the Democrats.
So this might not be the most satisfying answer, but historically, when it comes to midterm elections, no party has really ever had a message that has won in a wave. Like you don't really need that's not how midterms work with the opposite party in the White House. It would be good if they had a message, but that's not what has happened. So depending on where you want to start, in 1994, the Newt Gingrich wave, everybody remembers it as the contract with America. That was just a bunch of nonsense. There was nothing there was nobody who actually was read that contract and was like, that's what the Republicans stand for. I'm going to vote for that. It was a rejection of Clinton, not right out of the gate. Clinton became more popular later, but early on he was not popular at all. In 2006, Democrats were elected on a wave of anger at the war that was going on and collapsing in Iraq, and anger at George W. Bush. But Rahm Emanuel had recruited across the country a host of war-supporting veterans. So pro-war veterans were washed into Congress by voters on an anti-war wave. In other words, what voters want, they're going to go out and find it, and if the person doesn't match, they're going to put it in anyway. So in this cycle, the question will be Trump's popularity. If people are pro-Trump, they're going to elect more Republicans. If they're anti-Trump, they're going to elect more Democrats, even if the Democrat is horrible. Now, if the Democrat is great, I think they actually have a message like the ones that we've been writing about, then they're going to be able to bring out some extra people who wouldn't have voted otherwise. But a lot of these key swing votes that move back and forth don't actually swing based on what the party that's out of power is saying. Now, that I'm just describing the reality of the history of how this works. Don't confuse me for advocating that parties should not stand for anything. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm just describing to you what has happened throughout American history when it comes to these midterms that happen 2 years after a president comes into power. And we've been seeing something interesting happen in what's called the generic ballot numbers. So the generic ballot is they ask Americans, would you rather be represented today in Congress by a Democrat or a Republican? Generic Democrat or Republican. And in December, the numbers were 15 points in favor of Democrats, which is the biggest gap that they'd seen since 2006. And if that gap held, all the political science suggests that that's more than enough to take the House back. That gap is narrowing now to 2, 3, 4 points. So something has changed. Well, the tax bill is becoming more popular. Trump didn't throw up on himself during the State of the Union. You can come up with any of your own explanations. He might be getting a little more credit for what of the economy is working now that he's been in office for a year. Steve Bannon's out of the White House. You can throw out any number of answers, but his approval ratings are ticking up, and that number is narrowing. And if that narrows, then this huge portion of votes that we're talking about changes. What Ammar is talking about is targeting a different set of voters, people who voted in the presidential election in 2012, 2016, but tend not to vote in midterms. He and the other candidates like him are trying to get those people back out for the midterms. And he is also, like he said, he's going to try to go find that one Duncan Hunter person who donated to him and persuade him to vote for him. He loves to go into these rural and conservative areas and have conversations with people and try to move them his way. So that might not have been the answer that you were wanting or expecting, but that's my take on it.
So swinging back to, can you read that?
Yeah, was Ryan O'Neill, was COINTELPRO a conspiracy? Was J. Edgar Hoover not exposed of his abuses? This is nothing new. Liberals turning a blind eye to it is new. COINTELPRO was the illegal FBI operation that assassinated and infiltrated, carried out assassinations, infiltrated left-wing civil rights groups. J. Edgar Hoover certainly has been exposed. The FBI was a deeply rogue institution through his entire reign. The difference, so two points here. So this is nothing new. If by this you mean the Department of Justice going to the FISA court to get a warrant and shading their application for that warrant in such a way that the judge grants it to them without knowing all of the exculpatory detail, I think that's probably true. This is nothing new. This happens in secret, so we don't know that, and that's why we should have FISA reform. We should take these cases of domestic surveillance seriously, even when they don't line up with our political priors. Liberals turning a blind eye to it is new. Yes and no. You have to. There are some factions of liberals who have kind of always been comfortable with state power, with the intelligence services, with what the FBI is doing. But certainly, you're seeing more liberals getting into bed now with the FBI and with the intelligence community, and you're seeing the Republicans attack law enforcement. It's a huge mash of strange bedfellows that just shows that everything is political and partisan and up for grabs.
So I have this long-standing habit of using professional wrestling as an analogy when I don't know what else to say. So when I was 10 years old, I believed professional wrestling was real. When I was 12, I kind of believed it was real. My pride wouldn't allow me to admit it to my classmates who made fun of me, especially the girls in 5th grade. But as I got older, I realized it was fake. And now I talk about it more in terms of a way of critiquing prejudice in our society and how it's exploited for entertainment or for politics. And I sort of think of Fox News as the equivalent of professional wrestling in the sphere of journalism. And it seems to me, I read the memo, that they're not really aiming for anyone beyond the 10-year-old Eric. The people who believe that Fox News is journalism are going to be happy with this memo. They're not really too concerned about even 12-year-old Eric. They're certainly not concerned about Eric when he got to college. They're going after their own base with this memo. They're not really even trying to convince anyone else.
Right, and some of it is just pure symbolism and signaling. So what they're doing is signaling to the FBI that we're coming after you. And so the idea is that if the president and if the Congress and its investigative authorities are now turned on the FBI, that they hope that will have a chilling effect on what the FBI does when it comes to investigating Trump through the Mueller probe.
What about the question I texted you that maybe Trump has always been really insecure about the fact that Carter Page was being surveilled. Is it possible that he knows that he or someone spoke to Carter Page and he wants that evidence thrown out?
I don't think we're talking about court of law stuff here. I think this is this is about the court of public opinion, just trying to muddy the waters so much that the whole thing is corrupt and it's so gross and let's just move on. Hey, the Dow is up. In fact, actually, the Dow crashed more than 500 points today.
What was the reason they gave for that?
They don't ever know.
But they always say they know.
So the reason they say was fears of the Federal Reserve raising interest rates. Okay. That's what they claimed it was today. The best line is always there were more sellers than buyers, which is just like restating the fact that it went down. But yeah, that's what they're saying. That and also I think that what they would say is that psychologically there is a sense out there that this can't go on forever, and there's also a historical reckoning. Like the bull markets don't run in perpetuity, and so everybody's question is, when do all the investors' questions, when do we get out? And so whenever there's a little skittishness, like, oh, maybe this is the moment to get out. I forget which rich person said this. It might have been Carnegie. It was some one of these plutocrats from a century ago that, who didn't lose money in the Great Depression. Somebody asked him later in his life, how have you gotten so rich? And he said, by always selling too soon. And I think there's a lot of wisdom kind of embedded in that. Anyway, glad that we could bring in Ammar Campa, who may wind up being the next congressman from the 50th District of California, or he may not. We're going to continue to follow that race. Thanks, everybody, for the questions for him, and I hope you enjoyed that.
Okay.